Okay, now, how bad a shape are we in terms of the housing market and how that has affected our economy? Well, since the Great Crash, and in fact, even going back to 2006, at the height of the housing bubble, since then, we have lost approximately $7 trillion in home value in the country. Now, how are people going to go out and spend and make the economy better if they've lost $7 trillion overall? That money's gone. So one of the things you should address is the situation in housing. In the latest jobs plan that President Obama unveiled, there is no new proposal on housing. So if you're getting foreclosed on or your house is underwater, which, by the way, is true for a quarter of the homes in the country, that's such an astounding fact, that their house is no longer worth what they pay in mortgages and what they owe on it, right? So instead of addressing that colossal problem, which is taking all this money out of the economy, and why we can't get it back up, and why unemployment continues to be devastatingly high, we don't address it at all. Gee, I wonder if $7 trillion made a difference. You know, from 5 years ago, the price on an average house is down 32% in the country. And just since June, I should say to June in this year, for half the year, down another 4.5%. They keep diving and diving and diving, and yet we're doing nothing about it. Now, what was TARP about in the beginning? What was all the $2 trillion that the Fed printed and gave to the banks? That was supposed to help the housing market. Because the banks, out of the goodness of their heart, were going to help all of you with your houses, right? Come to find out, they didn't. They just kept the money. Huh, really weird. Gee, I wonder why the economy's struggling. You want more depressing numbers? All right, here we go. Now, this graph is going to show you exactly what's gone wrong in our economy in the last 2 years. We're going to show you jobs adjusted for inflation and corporate profits adjusted for inflation over the last 8 quarters, meaning the last 2 years. Well, let's look at jobs here. Oh, there they are on the left. Nothing. Going nowhere. No improvement at all. But when you look at corporate profits, they are doing fantastic. Nearly 50% better than they used to be 2 years ago. This is it. This is the graph. Because this shows you that when we gave all the money to the banks and when we did all the favors for the corporations, they were lying. They were never going to create more jobs, but anybody with half a bit of sense could have told you that. They are legally mandated to make as much profit as possible. They're not legally mandated to create jobs. So when you have a Republican proposal adopted by the Obama administration that, hey, let's do favors for the big business and then hope that they do the right thing, well, that is at best foolishly naive and at worst purposely complicit. They knew they weren't going to create jobs, or God, they were so foolish as to think that if I just give trillions to the top banks, somehow jobs will improve. Well, look at the graph again. See it for yourself. Did the jobs improve? No. Did those corporations take all that money home? Yes. Now the amount of cash that top corporations in America have is rising from nearly $2 trillion to $3 trillion. It's not that they don't have enough money. They're sitting on a ton of money. But they don't want to create jobs with it because they think America's a bad investment. If they create jobs anywhere, they create it in China and India and elsewhere. And then they turn around to the U.S. government and go, give me more tax cuts. Oh, yeah, jobs are right around the corner. We promise, Obama, we promise. Give me more tax cuts. And the latest jobs plan proposal by President Obama, more tax cuts. 56% of the proposal is in tax cuts. How's that working out for us? Look, I was talking to a reporter from the Washington Post yesterday, and she asked me what I thought President Obama was doing wrong. His number one problem, and I'm really afraid about this, is that he actually believes the Republicans. That he's not faking it. It's not that he's just a compromiser. It's not that he thinks they're wrong, but what could he do, God gee willikers, because he's going to listen to what he says. I think he really believes that. And he thinks that if you give the banks all the money, that will loosen up credit, as Geithner says, and that they'll give out the credit. You want to know why one of the reasons the banks are not giving out the credit is? And look, almost nobody talks about this. This is really important. You got to understand this. If you keep the interest rates near zero, which is what the Fed is doing, that means the banks get the money almost for free. Now, that part we've talked a lot about, right? But it has another consequence. The banks don't want to lend out the money, because when they lend it out, they also get a really bad interest rate return. So they think, what am I going to lend out the money for 2-3% for? No. Even 4-6%, I'm not going to lend it out. Instead, I'm going to take the money and gamble with it, because derivatives trading gives me a lot better return. So I'll take the money at 0%, and then I'll do massive gambling with it, and I won't lend it out to you because I have a disincentive in lending it out to you. So it is the worst of all worlds. And how about us when it comes to the average American? Well, why would you do savings? I went to Bank of America the other day, and they tell me if I put it in a savings account, my return for the year is 0.05%. Not 5%, not 0.5%, 0.05%. And then we wonder why Americans don't do any saving. Well, at that rate, you'd be stupid to do savings. If you put it in a savings account, they're going to charge you some fine or something at some point, and boom, there you go. You lost more money than you would have gained. So it gives all the wrong incentives. And then we're surprised there aren't jobs and the economy's not picking up. The problem is President Obama believes in right-wing thinking. He thinks those tax cuts and those giveaways to the banks are going to work when they're not going to work. And they're not going to work by the election. And when he's still sitting at around 9% unemployment, as he heads into that iceberg in November of 2012, he's going to be thinking, golly gee, Tim, what did I do wrong? Well, the problem was you listened to Tim Geithner and Ben Bernanke. By the way, one last thing on this, and then we got to take a break and then come back with fun stuff. Again, Politico. I'm quoting them a lot today because they're a good bellwether for what conventional wisdom is. They've got a conservative writing an article about how Obama hasn't done enough for the poor and the middle class. We told you, man. We told you that after all the times you listened to them and you did what they told you to do, that at the end they would turn around and say, "You see that? Obama's for the rich." And the thing is, they're half right. That's why they make their argument now all of a sudden looks compelling. Like, if you don't know all this stuff and you don't know what the Republicans stand for, you read that article in Politico and you're like, yeah, wait a minute, he did give it all to the bankers. And wait a minute, that guy's talking about the same things Carville's talking about, how Obama didn't indict any of the bankers, right? And you're like, oh, that's right. And then at the end he says, that's why we got to do a flat tax. Do you see the trick? And then they say, oh, no, you see, Obama was wrong, so let's go further right. Let's go to a flat tax, which would devastate the middle class. Hook, line, and sinker.